but when I saw the East Wing of the White House being destroyed, something sank within me. There was a feeling that what I was seeing there was not just about the destruction of a building, but about a larger narrative, about a narrative of destruction, of erasure. And I thought about how this particular administration is working so hard to destroy parts of the United States that were safe or safer parts for people of various groups. Seeing that building, that wing demolished without deep reflection, without warning, without knowing exactly what the plans are for what's going in place, seems so indicative of the way this administration has been operating and seems to be part of this larger story of how they are trying to shape our understanding of what America is. This morning, as you've been hearing, we are acknowledging LGBTQ plus History Month. And I think about all the things that have happened in just these last months since January that look like they're trying to shape the narrative in a particular way and to take away the reality of queer people here in the United States and what we have contributed to history over time. So I wanted to share some things with you this morning because I know often for many of us, our understanding of queer history seems to start with Stonewall, which is understandable. It's what we know from our modern times. But I was able to do some research a couple of years ago and found out so many interesting facts about early U.S. history that I wanted to share with all of you because I know some of these were new to me. So if we go all the way back to 1624, we can see that a man named Richard Cornish was executed in Virginia for homosexual acts. In 1642, Elizabeth Johnson of Massachusetts was whipped publicly for unseemly practices with another maid. In 1649, Sarah Norman and Mary Hammond of the Plymouth colony are taken to court for their relationship. 1691, Deborah Beyer of Massachusetts is fined for wearing men's clothing. How many women in this room today would be fined for that, right? 1698, a French explorer among the Illinois Indians remarks on the number of two-spirit people blurring lines of masculinity and femininity, just a part of their culture. 1782, there's a woman named Deborah Sampson, and she disguises herself as a man and enlists in the Continental Army. 1752, Dr. Charles Hamilton, an esteemed physician, is arrested in Chester, Pennsylvania, because it's revealed that she was born Charlotte Hamilton. In 1850, a Crow Nation woman chief is renowned for her war exploits and for having not one, but several wives. In 1846, a white traveler in Wyoming records the deep friendship of two Sioux men whose romantic friendship was common among many of the prairie tribes. In 1859, we have this lovely correspondence between two free black women living in the North, Addie Brown and Rebecca Primus. 1924, the Society for Human Rights is founded as the U.S.'s first gay rights organization. Now we're getting into territory we all may know a little bit better, right? 1934, Hollywood adopts the Hays Code, forbidding queer depictions on screen. And then in 1942, the military makes guidelines to exclude gay men. 1953, President Eisenhower bans the employment of homosexuals by the federal government. And meanwhile, One, the name of it, the first openly lesbian and gay national publication in the U.S., puts out its very first issue. 1957, a Navy report says, there's no evidence that homosexuals cannot acceptably serve in the military. And that report is then suppressed for 10 years. And then in 1969, transgender people are among those who resist arrest in a bar raid by the police at the Stonewall Inn, igniting the modern LGBTQ plus movement. New things, new information for some of you? Yeah, really interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting to know what we've been told and what we haven't been told and how we understand what the United States is. And I think this morning I wanted to celebrate not just the big events we've all heard about, but the quirky things like gay penguins at the zoo, and also all of the stories of the people who were up here today. We've had John's beautiful and poignant reflection about his own life, and all the other participants in our service this morning have stories of their own. And of course, those of you out there have stories either of yourself or loved ones along the way. And I think when we see the destruction or the attempted destruction of what it means to be part of this country, it's important for us to fully embrace and hear and know stories that might otherwise be forgotten, erased, bulldozed. This is especially important at this particular time because on November 7th, the Supreme Court will be meeting privately to discuss whether to take on a case that would overthrow the Marriage Equality Act from 2015. So for those of us who are married in this country, as you've heard this morning, as many of us are, and that particular right could potentially be undermined. And we know, unfortunately, with Roe versus Wade, that there is no guarantee that things that we think are settled and done are settled and done. So it's important that we hear the stories, that we know that queer history is just part of American history. It's part of the fabric of who we are, and that there are so many stories out there. It's important for us because I believe we are builders, not destroyers. And that distinction is one of the things that will save us. I want to tell you a story this morning, a story of someone I knew, because I am here to tell the story. Again, it's important that we know these stories and that we share our own. So I first met Hank when we were both very young. I remember it was Elaine Stritch who said, "No one's ever been younger than I was." That's kind of how I feel when I look back to those years, 19, 20, where you think you know something, but you realize later you didn't know anything at all. But I met Hank, and it was one of those instant connections. We just were able to see each other in a way that was authentic and real. And we talked late into the night, and then the next day I was headed home from USC to Colorado for holiday vacation, and so for 3 weeks we talked every night on the phone, and couldn't wait to see each other again. We couldn't have been more different, really. He was from Texas, and he was a Marine. He had always wanted to be a Marine while he was growing up. He wanted to do something to help his country, and that was the pathway that was open and available to him, and so he took it, and he relished it, and he saw himself as a career Marine. Meanwhile, I was, as artsy-fartsy as you could get at the time, right? I'm in school for theater and film and creative writing and all of this, and opposites attract, as so often happens. Well, we had this lovely platonic, romantic friendship that just seemed to grow deeper and deeper over time. As I said, we were both very, very young. And one day, after we'd known each other for several months, he came to me and he said, "I want to know if you will go to the Marine Corps ball as my date." Now, you have to remember, this is in the middle of don't ask, don't tell. This is the 90s. And at that point, he had only told his friends that he was seeing someone. And when they started asking him questions, he panicked and said her name was Janice. So the joke was that I was Janice. So he was finally coming out to his friends, and he wanted to take me to the ball, and I said, you realize this is career suicide. And he said, I know, but I have to be true in this way. And so what could I do but say yes? And so there we were, and some people were kind to us, and others were not so kind, but we were there, and we danced, and we had a lovely time. And then afterwards, as we were standing outside, he took a button from his jacket. He said this is an old tradition. I don't know whether it's really a tradition or not, but he said it's an old tradition that when a Marine really cares about somebody, they give them one of the buttons. And so he gave me this button. And I've held on to that ever since. Time, of course, moves on, and I very shortly thereafter met my wonderful husband, who, as you hear, we're celebrating 17 years of marriage now, having been together longer than that. And Hank gave us his blessing and went on to go back to Texas because, as you can imagine, his time in the Marines was now at an end because of taking me to that ball. In Texas, he never seemed to quite find his way. The life he had envisioned for himself was different. The pathway was uncertain. He ran for public office but didn't quite get enough votes. He became a journalist. He was here, there, everywhere. I'd call him and find him that he was living on a houseboat, living in this city, living in that city. And then one day I tried to reach him and had a little bit of trouble doing that, and finally found his spouse at the time, who let me know that Hank had died a couple of months before from AIDS complications. The first thought I had at that time was, people don't still die of AIDS, but this was 15 years ago or so, and that was absolutely still a reality then. But more than that, he had struggled with the medication, and I think struggled with finding his place in the world, and he just wasn't as fully committed to taking that medication at that time because he was struggling in so many ways. I tell his story to all of you now because I see it as a story of courage. This is somebody who was willing to stand up in a way, in a time that did not embrace what he was doing at all. It was a very, very hard road that put him on. And I remember him with such fondness. His story is a story that is one of many, many people who are gone now, some people who are left to tell the stories for them, and some people who are not. And of course, we're living in a time when people are trying to take away these stories from people, trying to suppress them, trying to stop these stories from playing out, from people having lives of dignity. And it's important for us to be builders so that the Hanks of this world can actually live out their stories and not be persecuted for who they are. This is a call for all of us to claim our truth at this time, to tell our stories, to be proud of our identities, and to hold ourselves with care and hold each other with care during a time where there's so much attempt to destroy so much in our lives. And what can we do as Unitarian Universalists during this time? Well, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the fact that we really are builders. And if we look at our values, they really are all about building, creating, affirming, building foundations. So our values are justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. And how did I do that so quickly? I'm going by that JET-PIG acronym, right? It's silly, but you can remember it that way. But justice, think about justice. That's where we build systems that honor every person's dignity, not just the privileged few. Every person's dignity, not just the privileged few. Equity. is where we build fairer stories, where queer lives are not footnotes but foundations. And that goes for so many other marginalized communities as well. Transformation is where we build communities brave enough to change. Are we brave enough to make changes so that we can widen the circle so more people can be part of what we have to offer and what we have to give? It's not easy. Pluralism is where we build space for many truths, identities, and ways of being. That means you can sit next to someone on a Sunday morning in this space and they can believe different things about how the universe operates and what God is or isn't, or whether they hold any of those beliefs at all, and it's okay. It's okay. We can be together connected by the values that we share. Interdependence means we build webs of care where no one is forgotten, and those people who are being targeted are especially being brought into that network of care. And finally, we do all of this with generosity. We build with open hearts, giving love freely. Nothing we're seeing, right, from this current administration. These are hard values to uphold during this time, but I really believe that our call as UUs is to lean into these values and be who we are supposed to be, and to acknowledge the fact that we are invited right now to be builders in a time when so much is about destruction and bulldozing. We are here to lift other people and ourselves up. So the question becomes, what courageous acts can we do right now to build a different future? Whether it's the courageous act of taking someone to a ball who shouldn't have been there, or the courageous act of reaching out to someone in this community who might be being targeted at this moment in time and offering them a space that is safe. There's so many things we can do, so many opportunities in our daily lives to find those things that we can do to build this future that we are looking toward. During the pandemic, I cleaned out several old boxes and drawers and things and found that button again. And it inspired me to write something that ended up being published in this book from Skinner House called Shelter in This Place, Meditations on 2020. So I'll end this sermon with this piece, if I can find it. So this is called Telling You Now, and it refers to a virus or two, but I was thinking in preparation for today that we can look at what's happening in our country as a kind of virus, a virus of the spirit. I love you. I forgot to tell you the last time I saw you on the street as you waved goodbye. A barely registered moment, you in jeans and your hair messed up, and me in that jacket from the thrift store. But it's the ball I remember. The military ball where you took me as your date. How did you dare to, way back then? How they stared when we walked in, you in your uniform and me in my tuxedo. Someone asked me if I was a waiter. You had on white gloves and we danced, though I am not a good dancer, even when I'm not nervous like I was that night as the whispers swirled in the air around us. And later, when it was all over, we stood under a starry sky like an old movie backdrop, you pressing into my hand a button from your jacket, a gold button with a military insignia on it, and I still have it. I love you. I forgot to tell you then, so I'm telling you now, even though you are gone, stolen by AIDS. There is a new virus in town. I tell you now, if you were here, a new thing to wrestle and fear, and so much of it is terrible. But it has reminded me of one thing: to say what's important when I can, while I can, because I may not always have that chance. You taught me that first, and every fiber of my being is reminded of it now. I love you. I was scared to tell you then, so I'm telling you now, because now, even though it's not what we expected, is precious. And it may be all we have. We are builders, not destroyers. And we build on a foundation of love.